Hi guys, welcome back. Another in the cheap versus expensive line of videos, and this one's looking at rifle as well, following on from the bipod series that I just did. This is actually looking at a different type of mount. Many of you might have heard of the Hogsaddle, pig saddle. So mounts for rifles on top of tripod systems have become quite popular. The most recent versions generally use Arca type mounts, the sort of things you find on a camera. I use those on the camera when I'm mounting it on a gimbal or something like that. But a lot of the rifle systems now have Arca rails on, and they use those systems. But prior to that, and still in use by a lot of people, are these things. So this is not an original Hogsaddle. The original Hogsaddle I have used. We did have one kicking around. I couldn't lay my hands on it for this video, but very, very similar. And this one is actually a cheap knockoff version, and it's one of the only times that I found a cheap knockoff version to be pretty well suited to the requirements that I needed it for. And there are some definite drawbacks to it, and you can see where the money's been saved, and you can see where the precision engineering of the Hogsaddle makes a difference. But for what I'm using these things for personally, it hasn't affected the ability for me to use them. So these systems mount on top of a tripod. On this, it's got a Manfrotto type mount, which I'll show you in a sec, and there are some downsides to this piece on here. And then this frame is all metal. I think this item cost about £25–30 on Amazon. Took a couple of weeks to arrive. So the rifle sits in there, and then you simply screw that in and lock the rifle in. You've got some rubberized components on each side of there to grip the rifle and just make sure it's not being damaged while it's slung in there. It does do a good job of gripping the rifle. Unlike a Hogsaddle, the engineering on this is a little bit clunky. So one of the downsides is it rattles around, and if you're a tactical end user, you probably don't want things making rattling noises, and it's just not the greatest piece of engineering in the world. But it's a very simple mechanism. There's a little bit of a leather washer there, so that when you tighten this thing up, it does grip well enough that it doesn't come undone, so that's a good thing. It probably won't last forever, and I'm sure again the Hogsaddle would be a better option, but the Hogsaddle, they're about $300 compared to this, which is, you know, $30 or something. It is robustly made. You know, the metal frame it's using is pretty impressive in terms of its structure and its rigidity. I don't see it breaking down. Nice big screws they've used in there, so everything in terms of build quality is good, until we get to this Manfrotto mount, which is actually plastic. So for those of you who don't know what the Manfrotto mount is, this is a Manfrotto tripod, which became very, very popular for mounting rifles on, because they're very light, they're not crazily expensive, they're very quick to deploy, and they're well made, they're robust. I use them for cameras, but I also use them for shooting. And the mount on this is a quick mount, so you can just clip in, push down, and then that automatically clips shut, and then you can just push that down. Now you can also put that down, which locks that clip. That clip will now not open until you open up this secondary clip on here, so it just gives you an element of safety, and then that opens back up and you can just quickly detach. The downside of that plastic is that once you lock that down, the plastic actually starts giving way, so over time it's going to break that. And also you don't get a really tight fit, so you can see we've ended up putting a bit of duct tape on either side of that just to snug it up a bit so that you get a tighter fit on there. Now what you can do is you can actually buy these things separately, so you could just unscrew this plastic thing and you can get either a mount directly from Manfrotto to replace that. They're about £20, or you can buy a metal Chinese version of the Manfrotto mount on there, and that will cost you about £8 or something like that on AliExpress. So a very, very easy fix for that plastic piece, and I would definitely suggest getting rid of that, because that is definitely going to break down over time. But as for the rest of it, it's perfectly usable for us. We're not concerned about, you know, rattling and letting people know that we're in an area. We're not snipers. We're just using kit to demonstrate, you know, the precision of rifles, etc., and the precision of the ammunition. So this suits us. We use it sometimes for proofing. If we need to mount something at a certain height, we've even mounted shotguns in here to proof shotgun 12 gauge ammunition, and it's done a great job. Sometimes we've got targetry that has to sit at a certain height, so we have to have the gun at a certain height, so we get that on a you know, a short range proofing, and this is just the job for that. It's certainly a lot better than trying to permanently fix a gun in a mount. One of the good things about these type of systems is, under recoil, although you're clamping the rifle in, it will eventually start working its way back. And that isn't a bad thing, because what you don't want is, if you, and we have done this before, we've permanently modified systems so that they're basically bolted into place. And over time, what happens is the internal parts of that rifle or shotgun break down, because all that energy can't go anywhere, so it just stays within the rifle system itself, and all those parts become massively damaged over a period of time, and the whole thing just starts falling apart. So at least with this, it allows an element of, you know, rearward movement in the system, so that if you do get too much energy going through it, it's just going to push it back a little bit at a time, rather than actually damaging and ripping apart the system itself. So I would say that's a pretty good deal for the cheap versus expensive. If you're not concerned about any sort of tactical implications, if you're a serious end user and you know taking this thing into you know, warfare or whatever, of course it's worth spending 300 odd pounds to get the real deal, because it's better made, it's never going to let you down. Those original Hogsaddles will go on for years and years, you know, that they'll just keep trucking. They're really, really good pieces of kit, and you're paying for the precision engineering. You know, that's where the money is. It costs a lot of money to engineer things to tight tolerances. The quality of the metal that they use on there is absolutely excellent, and overall it's just a far better piece of kit. If you're just someone who needs to clamp up a rifle, you know, like I use that sometimes for doing a bit of vermin control, so I just want to mount a rifle on top of a tripod to shoot in, you know, a farmyard or something like that, where I can't lay down in the muck because it's totally gross on the floor and I've got nothing to shoot off. I've got no shooting platforms, but what I can do is get the tripod out, stick the rifle on top of that, the air rifle, and just stand there, so I'm off the ground, I'm not freezing in the wet ground, and I can happily move that rifle around on top of the tripod, no problem at all. For that kind of thing, it's fine. Vermin control, hunting, and you know, we've shot heavy calibers with that, absolutely fine, it dealt with it no problem. So for all those kind of applications, I would say you can definitely get away with the cheaper version. If you're a professional end user, buy the decent kit. It's just not worth getting let down to save yourself a few pounds, and then you're out in the field and you can't use the kit that you've taken with you. I hope that helped you somewhat, guys. Take care. Have a great day. Have a great day.